While there are undoubtedly a lot of weird things that happen over at the Pelosi household, and despite Nancy's striking resemblance to a real-life witch, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's not magic or witchcraft that makes the Pelosi so damn good at predicting the stock market. And they're at it again. A few weeks ago, Nance sold off $3 million of her Google stocks, and wouldn't you know it, this week the DOJ announced it was suing Google for abusing a monopoly over a wide swath of online advertising tools and corrupting legitimate competition in the ad tech industry by doing so. Well, knock me over with a feather, or maybe a hammer would be more appropriate. But anyway, this is just some kind of a quinky-dink, isn't it? Nancy Pelosi, a very powerful Democrat with access to a whole lot of inside information, just happened to sell off her stocks just weeks before Google was hit with an antitrust suit. The timing is pretty damn serendipitous, ain't it? It's not like this is the first time. If y'all recall, over the summer and ahead of Congress's vote on a $52 billion subsidy to the semiconductor industry, Paul miraculously made a multi-million-dollar stock purchase in a semiconductor company. She and DUI hammer time over there, Paul Pelosi, are worth hundreds of millions, which is really miraculous given Nancy has been in the not-so-lucrative business of being a public servant for more than 35 frickin' years. Her salary is just under $224,000 per year, which is still far more than most Americans make, but still not anywhere near the nearly $200 million she's reportedly worth. This crap needs to end, and not just because of Nancy and Paul. They aren't the only ones abusing the system. They just happen to be really damn good at it. Thank goodness Senator Josh Hawley has introduced the aptly titled Pelosi Act to prevent our representatives from trading stocks and profiting while in office. They're getting rich, and meanwhile, average folks are selling foot pics on OnlyFans to pay for eggs. Enough of this crap. Oh, teachers' unions, the epitome of everything that is wrong with American education. These powerful unions have Democrat politicians in a headlock, largely because 94% of all campaign contributions go to, you guessed it, Democrats. In fact, analysis of the National Education Association spending shows that in 2020 to 2021, the teachers union spent a fraction of its money on representing members and more than double that amount on political activities. Wow, just wow. So what is the solution, and how do we combat that kind of influence? Joining me now is the CEO of Freedom Foundation, Aaron With. All right, Aaron. Now, this has been an issue, these teachers unions, that normally was very politically divided, but now I think even Democrats are coming around. We saw it in Virginia. Parents care, Americans care. These teachers unions, what they did during COVID with everything that they're pushing now, a lot of people are very concerned. So what do parents really need to know about the inner workings of these unions?
Parents, teachers, and students alike are waking up to the real agenda of the teachers' unions, and they're basically trying to turn our schools into liberal indoctrination centers. That's their main goal here. They're the number one funders of the political left in America, and what they're really trying to do is play their agenda out in Congress, in the White House, in state legislatures, all across the board. And their agenda is simply to raise taxes and then push this critical race theory, sex ed, and all these other social agenda items that they now have on everyday Americans. But they're doing it through our kids in our schools.
Well, they certainly are, and I think a lot of Americans, myself included, are very confused as to how we got here. Yes, teachers tend to be more liberal in nature, more Democrat in nature, but to think that unions this large, representing this many people, would be so left and so radical and care so much more about the indoctrination than the actual academics, it's weird to think how we got here. I know that you guys have been studying this for a long time, working on this issue for a long time. When did the shift happen where it started to get so radical?
Most teachers, so before I go there, most teachers that we have in public schools today, they're heroes. They're people that want to teach our kids. They want to teach reading, writing, math. My wife, until last year, was a public school teacher. I mean, these are people that care about teaching our kids. What the teachers union is doing, though, is they're activating a very small portion of activist teachers that are going out into schools and pushing critical race theory and all the rest of it onto our kids. I mean, it started decades ago when government unions were allowed to become a thing. They were allowed to take money from public employees, which is inherently wrong, because what they're doing is they're taking money from public employees, funneling it into liberal candidates that go into office that agree to raise taxes on businesses and individuals and then grow the size of government. And what that means is that they can then get more public employees to pay more union dues. It's a vicious cycle that's been ongoing for decades now.
So are members of teachers' unions, the ones that aren't this tribe of radicals, is there anything that they can do to push back, or is it kind of a system of cancel culture where you sit down and you shut up if you don't agree? Because I'm sure it's probably that way, but I just wonder, anything that you're seeing, your wife being a teacher for so many years, is there any pushback within these unions to maybe change them, get them back to their intended purpose?
Yeah, we see a lot of it every single day, but what most public employees can do today is they can leave their unions and stop paying union dues. Your everyday teacher, most of them, have no idea that they can actually leave their unions. So what we do at the Freedom Foundation is we run a public education campaign to tell every public employee, not just teachers, in America, they can stop paying these union dues and get out of their radical unions. Because what happens then is the unions become accountable to their membership. They've had a monopoly on being able to take money from public employees, teachers, for so long and then spend it on liberal candidates. And none of these teachers and other public employees have known that they can leave. So they haven't had to provide any benefits. We exist to make sure that every single one of them knows.
I'm sure that there's an element of Stockholm syndrome kind of woven inside of there where these teachers, maybe they even know that they can leave, but they're scared to because that is an environment where it is a lot of groupthink. Unfortunately, the education system is liberal in nature, and it is intimidating in nature for a lot of these, especially these young teachers. So that's something that's great that you guys are working on this and that you're actively fighting it, giving people an opportunity beyond what they see from their teachers' unions and their union bosses that really are getting rich off of all of this. I want to go to some of the curriculum changes that we've seen. Not only do we have to go through COVID, and we're going to go into that in a few minutes, the shutdowns, the remote learning, everything that they put children through, forced masking, forced vaxxing, all of it, disaster, horrible, un-American. But even before that, CRT, critical race theory, was creeping its way into our schools. I'm only 30 years old. I never had critical race theory, but I can tell you that indoctrination started. I could see it, at least when I was in middle school to high school. Now, it feels like it's like pre-K at this point. What do we need to know?
What they're trying to do is they're trying to create public schools, turn them into liberal indoctrination centers. And critical race theory is one way that they can do that. Sex ed is another way. They're trying to get this stuff into the curriculum so that they'll turn these school kids into liberal voters. That's their overall agenda here. And what you see through things like critical race theory and the 1619 projects and all the rest of it is that they're trying to make it so that every public school kid is subject to this and it's forced down their throats and that parents don't have a choice about it. That's the goal of the teachers' unions here, is to keep parents out of education and make it so the teachers' unions have a complete control over it.
They've even gone so far as to say, and that's Democrat politicians as well, have said, parents, what do you know? Like, you leave the teaching to the students. You don't need to be the parents in this situation. We'll be the parents when they're at school, which they spend more time at school than they really do waking hours at home. So they have a lot of opportunity to get to these kids. Let's talk about COVID now and the teachers' unions, because this is so interesting to me. We know that the teachers' unions wanted to shut down. They wanted to stay shut down. A lot of them in prominent positions within the teachers' unions were vacationing in Puerto Rico at that time, but they wanted things to stay shut down. But now, if you listen to Randy Weingarten and others, they're trying to make people believe, and in some instances are successful at making people believe, that the teachers' unions weren't the ones that mandated and really encouraged the shutdowns.
They were lobbying for school shutdowns. They were lobbying the White House. They were lobbying just about anybody that would listen to them, state legislators, governors, school districts, all the rest of it. They wanted schools to be shut down. The reason that they wanted to do that was to flex political muscle, really around the 2020 election. They wanted to create a frenzy. They wanted to create fear amongst parents and everybody that would listen to them. And the real problem here is that the damage done was to our school children. Studies very clearly showed that the damage done from COVID was far less than what was done by school shutdowns. I mean, you talk about the mental health of kids. We've had studies even coming from Harvard saying that our students' education is 20 years behind what it could have been today. I mean, it's a complete disaster what they did, and it was all to pursue their political agenda. In Los Angeles, one of the examples there is that the teachers' union came out and they said that we're not going to go back to schools until we defund the police. I mean, it's crazy the stuff that they were coming up with. And again, like I said, it was all to get their political agenda, and the students were the ones that were hurt because of it.
You know, I have experienced a lot on college campuses, but it's even more now in high schools and elsewhere. I've just experienced it because I've gone to speak at college campuses. But the First Amendment and other rights that are not so much fought for on these school campuses, at least in a one-sided way, is also really concerning to me. And I wonder, the Freedom Foundation, is there anything that you guys are looking into to bringing back the First Amendment to not only college campuses, but now affecting all the way on down into the young kids?
We're focusing really on helping teachers and their First Amendment. I mean, the bottom line is that these teachers, most of them want to get out of their unions. So what we're doing is we're making it so that they can do that as freely as possible. Teachers' unions have been renowned for stopping these teachers from being able to leave their unions. They've created what they've called window schemes in order to be able to prevent a teacher from leaving until they, the unions, decide that they can. So we have 10 attorneys on staff. We have 80-something lawsuits against government unions today, and most of them are on behalf of public employees that are not being allowed to leave their unions. I say that it's time to put the power back in the hand of working-class teachers and other public employees and out of the hands of radical union bosses that are dictating the direction of our country today.
It seems to me that unions, at least in some areas, have become the thing that they were created to fight against. They are the man at this point. These rich union bosses, these trial attorneys that go to bat for the unions and the union bosses, it seems like such a web, but there's a lot of average American workers out there that they grew up with the unions, and that's all they know. So for those individuals out there, especially in our Rust Belt, maybe not in a teachers union, but in another union, what would you tell those workers that have been born and bred to believe the union above all?
Well, there's inherently a difference between private and public sector unions. There's a lot of private sector unions out there that do good for some workers, arguably. But public sector unions, they really don't do anything for their members. We've heard that from the members. We see it every single day. So what I tell public employees that belong to unions today is go to optouttoday.com, get out of their union. Your average public employee pays about $1,100 a year in union dues. That's real money. If you're earning $70,000 or $80,000 as a public employee today, and you can sign one form and get out of your union, nothing will change. None of your benefits will change, but you can put that money back in your pockets where it belongs, rather than into the union's political coffers. What they're spending it on is politics. What they're spending it on is giving it to people like Joe Biden. And if that's really what you want to do with your money, opt out and cut the check to them yourself.
Exactly.
Put this money back in your pockets. That's where it belongs. The thing that really annoys me about what the teachers' unions have done is that they've lied and deceived everyday public employees to either tell them that they have to belong to a union or that it's within their best benefit. They're basically telling them that you don't know what's best to do with this money, so give it to us because we know what's best. And my wife, like I said, she was a public school teacher. These are people like her friends. And it's scandalous to see the way they've brainwashed these teachers.
And the teachers' unions did not go to bat for the teachers who were being forced to get vaccinated, forced to mask. That's frustrating to me. One of my very good friends is a special education teacher, and she was all but forced to get the vaccine. Otherwise, she had to use her own sick days, money out of her pocket. Teachers' union didn't help her with that one. Imagine that. Well, thank you for giving all this information. I think a lot of people are very confused as to the difference between the unions and the teachers themselves. It's an important distinction. Thanks for everything that the Freedom Foundation is doing. You guys are fighting great battles, and thank you so much for being in Nashville.
Thank you.